So, Senator Sanders, you're going to run for president.
I am going to run for president. That's correct.
What's going to be different this time?
We're going to win. We are going to also launch what I think is unprecedented in modern American history, and that is a grassroots movement, John, which will have at least 1 million people from every state in this country coming together to not only defeat Donald Trump, not only to win the Democratic nomination, but also to lay the groundwork for transforming the economic and political life of this country. That's what's different.
And that's your theory, which is that without the groundswell, without the grassroots, you can't change the politics.
That's exactly right. Look, John, we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all. And the reason for that is the power of the insurance companies. We pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. That's the power of the pharmaceutical industry. We have a corrupt political system in which billionaires can contribute unlimited sums of money. That's the power of the top 1% and the billionaire class. And on it goes. So somebody can come before you and say, look, I want to do A and I want to do B, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, the only way that real change takes place is when millions of people stand up, fight back, and say, enough is enough. We're going to have a government that works for all of us, not just the few.
This time you're running in a field with a lot more Democrats. How has the field changed since the last time you ran?
Well, obviously, it's a different campaign. Last time was just Secretary Clinton, and now we'll have, who knows, 10, 15, 20 candidates.
Doesn't that make it harder?
In some ways it does. In some ways it makes it easier. When you're running against one person, you got to have 51% of the votes. Now, who knows what you need, 30, 35%. But bottom line for me is I think it is absolutely imperative that Donald Trump be defeated, because I think it is unacceptable and un-American, to be frank with you, that we have a president who is a pathological liar, and it gives me no pleasure to say that, but it's true. We have a president who is a racist, who is a sexist, who is a xenophobe, who is doing what no president in our lifetimes has come close to doing, and that is trying to divide us up. What presidents, even conservative presidents, liberal presidents, they understand their function is to bring our people together. This guy is trying to divide us up. That has got to end.
But all of your opponents will say, we've got to get Donald Trump out of the White House. That's not your distinguishing characteristic. So
that is not my distinguishing characteristic. I think what I am very proud of, and in a sense, this campaign, John, is a continuation of what we did in 2016. You will recall, you may recall, that in 2016, many of the ideas that I talked about, Medicare for all, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, making public colleges and universities tuition free, spending at least $1 trillion in rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, criminal justice reform, all of those ideas, people will say, oh, Bernie, they're so radical, they are extreme. The American people just won't accept those ideas. Well, you know what's happened in over 3 years? All of those ideas and many more are now part of the political mainstream, and a majority of the American people now support them. So what this campaign is about is understanding that 3 years ago, we began the political revolution. Now it's time to complete that revolution and to take that vision and implement it into reality.
So you're saying the party came your way?
Well, I don't want to say that. I think most people would say that.
Is that your argument then against your competitors, which is, I was Medicare for all before Medicare for all was cool?
I guess that's one way of looking at it, but it's no. I know many of the people, certainly the senators who are running, and without exception, I am fond of them. They are, in some cases, my friends. I think maybe what distinguishes this campaign from the others is not only that these are issues that, in fact, we did raise and had to take on enormous opposition as we did, but also that what I understand from the bottom of my heart, that real change in this country will never come about unless there is struggle, unless millions of people stand up and fight for that change. We have 3 people in America today who own more wealth than the bottom half of the American society. We are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all. We pay the highest prices for prescription drugs. We have a dysfunctional child care system. We have a president who doesn't even acknowledge the reality of climate change, let alone take on the fossil fuel industry. Real change, Don, is not going to come when somebody gets to the White House and say, oh, gee, members of Congress, I think you should, take on the hundreds of millions of dollars spent by the pharmaceutical company, do the right thing. That's not how it's going to happen. It happens when people stand up and fight back. That's the way that real change has always happened in this country.
You used to talk about a revolution. Yes. That's what you're talking about here.
That's right. In other words, once again, it's not going to happen inside the Beltway. The only way that Congress and the White House is going to move is when millions of people really do stand up and say, enough is enough. We want a government, not just rhetoric, this is reality, a government that works for all of us, not just wealthy campaign contributors.
Did you used to say,
this is dangerous. You're quoting me to myself. All right. What did I say?
You told Bob Schieffer, you said, I think it's fair to say that I am perhaps the most progressive member of the United States Senate. That's the last time you ran. Is that still true?
Yeah, I think so.
Let's talk about one of those. Well, let me ask you this. Is the size of or is the revolutionary nature of each individual policy prescription you make, whether it's on climate change or health care, is the size and boldness of it a signal of how serious you are? Because some of your competitors will be saying, well, let's have Medicare for all, but let's not do as much as Bernie Sanders wants. Does that mean they're not as serious as you are?
I don't want to. Look, these are my friends. These are good and serious people. So I'm not here to criticize my opponents. And I hope that the campaign that will take place within the Democratic primary process will be one on issues and not personal attacks. I think all that I'm saying here is that what I understand from the bottom of my heart is that at a time when, for example, the drug companies make billions and billions of dollars in profits, that they themselves will spend hundreds of millions of dollars to prevent a Medicare for all, you got to take them on. So do many members of Congress say we had to lower drug prices? Almost everybody recognizes that. But you cannot make those changes unless there is a movement of people who make the Congress and the president an offer they cannot refuse.
Here's why I ask. There is a debate in the Democratic Party, which you know so well, about whether your proposals are just too big for the system of government as it exists right now. They're just too large. You talk about a revolution, but other candidates are saying we need a more, increase the number of people who are covered by health care. Yes, it's a right, but we can't go all the way to what Bernie Sanders is
suggesting. John, we are sitting here in Burlington, Vermont, my hometown. Get in your car, go 50 miles north, and you'll be in Quebec, Canada. Now, somehow or another in Canada, for a number of decades, they have provided quality care to all people without out-of-pocket expenses. You go in for cancer therapy, you don't take out your wallet. And they do it for about 50% per capita of the cost that we spend. Now, if our friends in Canada can do it, if our friends in the UK can do it in a different way, if our friends in Scandinavia can provide quality health care to all of their people as a right for far less cost than we spend, you tell me why we can't do it. And I will tell you the answer. So I'm not going to give you the opportunity. I'm going to give you the answer. And that is, it is not a health care issue. It is a political issue. It's an economic issue. It's the power of the insurance companies and the drug companies. And I'm prepared to take them on.
Let me ask you a policy question and a political question about Medicare for all. When you go to Canada, still 2/3 of the people who have the health care in Canada have some form of private help with that insurance. Your Medicare for all plan, as I understand it, has no private element to it.
Well, if you want, in Canada, and what I want is to cover all of the basic health care needs. If people want cosmetic surgery, fine, they can go to a private insurance. The other thing that we do, which has not been talked about enough, is I'm a strong defender of Medicare as it currently exists. But Medicare today does not cover dental care, it does not cover eyeglasses, it does not cover hearing aids. And that is something that many seniors are concerned about. Our legislation will provide that coverage.
Well, but let me ask you on your Medicare for all. You have talked about the fact that polls show 70% are in favor of Medicare for all. But that number drops to 37 if somebody hears private insurance is going to go away, which is what your plan offers. So I guess my question is, you're offering something that the polling shows people can get very spooked very quickly about.
No, but that's because we're going to be taking on the insurance companies and the drug companies who are going to spend a whole lot of money distorting what we believe in. For example, they're going to say people, you're going to lose your current health insurance and employment. Yeah, but you're going to have the same exact doctor. You're going to have more freedom of choice under our proposal than you have under the current proposals. So there's a lot of misinformation that's going around on this issue. The bottom line is the average middle-class family will save money, will spend less money on health care, will have more choice, and have broader coverage than is currently the case.
So the other challenge to your healthcare plan will be cost. People, you can explain it to them, but people will say, "My goodness, there's no way everybody's going to get covered." And
John,
some of the estimates that come out.
I need you in the media to help us explain the truth.
Yeah.
We spend twice as much per capita on healthcare as the Canadians. All right. And the reason is we waste an enormous amount of money in administration and an incredibly dysfunctional and complicated system. Our proposal will cost the American people less than the current dysfunctional system. There are some estimates, by the way, that over the next 10 years, the current system, if not changed, could run up to $50 trillion. Now, here's where the dishonesty comes in. All right, people say, Bernie Sanders wants to raise your taxes. What they forget to tell you is that Bernie Sanders is going to do away with all of your private health insurance premiums. You're a family of four, John. The average family now is paying $28,000 a year for health insurance. That's going to end. No more out-of-pocket expenses. No more deductibles. The cost of prescription drugs is going to go down. We expand the kinds of coverage available for senior citizens. It's a good deal.
But that transition, which is essentially transitioning from private premiums you pay now into some federal system, just that alone is a massive transformation of the federal system, which just that part of it is, I mean,
let's not go all that crazy. Currently, we have Medicare, right,
Yeah.
for the elderly. Guess what? Medicare is probably the most popular health insurance program in America. We have Medicaid. That's a pretty popular program. We have the Veterans Administration, which, if you talk to veterans, is a pretty popular program. We are already spending a whole lot of money on public health programs. So all we are doing is taking a popular program that most seniors are very proud of, Medicare, and we're expanding it over a 4-year period to all of our people.
What happens to the 180 million people in the private insurance market now?
They will continue to be able to go to the doctors they want, the hospitals they want. The color of their insurance card will change.
And they will no longer be private. It'll be a public system.
It'll be Medicare.
Right. So, I mean, you're adding 180 million people to Medicare, so that'll take a little doing.
Look, back in 1965, I think, Medicare was established. And everybody said, oh, my God, it's impossible. This is communism. This is taking away everybody's freedom. Today, Medicare is a very popular program. Medicaid is a popular program. Yeah, so it's going to take an effort. But I think 2 points, John, on this issue. Number one, we as Americans have got to ask ourselves, how come every other major country guarantees health care to all people at far lower costs per capita than we do? That's number one. Number two, fundamental question. Is health care a human right or is it not? If you have the money, your kid is sick, you can get great health care. You don't have the money, your kid is sick, you're in trouble. Or you may go bankrupt after you come out of an expensive hospital procedure. We can do better as a nation.
Quick question about the politics of this. The Democratic Party just benefited from a revolutionary response at the ballot box in winning 40 seats in the House.
Right.
In the Senate, the Democrats didn't do as well because of the structure of the way it works.
We had a lot of seats, that we had to defend.
Of course, but that's part of the structure of the way politics works. My question to you is, you talk about a revolution. You just had a revolution in 2018, essentially, and it was unable to get past the structural system in the Senate.
John, revolutions do not happen overnight. One of the revolutions that I am very proud of, it's not just that many of the ideas that we brought forth in 2016 are now supported by a strong majority of the American people. It's that we are getting more people, ordinary people, young people, participating in the political process. And I think the future of the Democratic Party, frankly, is bringing young people, black and white and Latino and Native American and Asian American into the political process. And I'm very proud, and we're going to build on this, that in the last campaign, we lost, got 46% of the pledged delegates, but we won more votes from young people than Clinton and Trump did combined.
Does your success hurt in the marketplace of ideas, which is to say Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez can talk about a Green New Deal and is getting a lot of coverage for that. But that shrinks the amount of time that people are maybe paying attention to Bernie Sanders or some other idea. Does it change the marketplace of ideas?
Quite the contrary. The fact that we have more voices out there talking, in this case, about the existential threat to our country and the world, which is what climate change is, and the absolute need to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And by the way, when we do that, we create millions of good-paying jobs, and we are going to pay attention to our brothers and sisters in the fossil fuel industry who will be hurt by this transition. We're not going to leave them on the side of the road.
You were supportive of the fact that Amazon pulled out of New York City, that deal did not go through.
I was, but I was also supportive and maybe at the lead of telling Amazon, owned by the wealthiest person in the world, that they cannot continue to pay their employees $9 or $10 or $11 an hour. They had to raise the minimum wage, their minimum wage, to $11 an hour, which, as you recall, happened. We did that with Disney as well. What you have, and with a company like Amazon, is a very profitable company owned by the wealthiest guy in the world, who, among other things, we recently learned paid 0 federal taxes. So you're a worker out there, you're making $40,000 or $50,000 a year. You pay more in taxes than Amazon did. They made billions of dollars in profit. And what I did not like about what they did to New York, that's New York's decision, not mine. But I don't like a powerful company kind of playing off one state or one city against another. All right, you're Los Angeles. What are you going to give me? You're New York City. What are you going to give me? How much corporate welfare are you going to give me? Because I have some jobs. I don't think that's a good way to do business in America.
Corporate tax rate's going to go up under Bernie Sanders?
Absolutely.
How high?
Well, I can't give you, that's something we've got to think about. But let's deal with this. I will tell you this very frankly, John. I worry very much that in our country, and you ain't going to hear anyone else tell you this, you're not going to hear it on CBS too much, so, is that this country is moving toward an oligarchic form of society. And that means that we have a small number of billionaires, Jeff Bezos being one, who have enormous economic and political power. And that's why I've introduced a very progressive estate tax to deal with that issue. But at a time when we have so many social needs, when we have children in this country who are going hungry, when we have veterans who are sleeping out on the street, when we have to combat climate change, you know what? Yeah, we are going to ask the billionaires and the wealthiest people to stop paying their fair share of taxes. No apologies on my part.
What's your opinion of capitalism these days?
What, pardon me?
What's your opinion of capitalism at its...
Look, I think what we see in this country and around the world is a lot of great entrepreneurs who come up with some great ideas and some great products. But I think what is happening is some of these folks, we have a system which allows these people to accumulate huge amounts of income and wealth. So when I talk about democratic socialism, you're not talking about the government running the local grocery store or anything else like that. What we are saying is that in America, and by the way, Franklin Delano Roosevelt talked about this way back in the 1940s, that people are entitled not only to certain constitutional political rights, they are entitled to economic rights. So somebody wants to call me a radical, okay, here it is. I believe that people are inherently entitled to health care. I believe people are entitled to get the best education they can. I believe that people are entitled to live in a clean environment. People are entitled to have decent paying jobs. That's what I believe.
The president mentioned socialism in his State of the Union address.
Yeah, I heard that.
What's he going after there?
Look, he's going to appeal. He's going to lie. He's going to say Bernie Sanders wants the United States to become Venezuela. Bernie Sanders does not want to have the United States become the horrific economic situation that unfortunately exists in Venezuela right now. What Bernie Sanders wants is to learn from countries around the world. Bernie Sanders wants to learn from Finland in terms of why they have the highest quality public educational system in the world. Learn from Sweden and Denmark why they have virtually free childcare and high quality free health care for their people. Why other countries are doing a better job in dealing with income and wealth inequality than we are. So you got a president who is a demagogue, a president who is leading us in an authoritarian direction. I would hope that the American people don't believe too much of what he says.
Democrats, you know this well, come to you and say, you're not a Democrat. Why are you running in the Democratic primary?
Well, first of all, I am a member of the Democratic leadership. I've been in the Democratic caucus. I am part of the leadership of the Senate. I have been part of the Democratic caucus in the House for 16 years. And I will say this in terms of that. So, and I have knocked my brains out running around the country to help Democrats win the House, to help governors win, Democratic governors win their seats. But this is what I will also say. If you look at polling in this country, what you find is that a whole lot of people are dissatisfied with both the Democratic and Republican parties. Usually the Republicans come out lowest, Democrats, and more people are seeing themselves as independents. So if the Democratic Party is going to do well in the future, I think they have to reach out to those independents, including, by the way, a lot of young people, a lot of people of color, and bring them into the Democratic Party. And I think I'm in a good position to do that.
The revolution you're talking about, does it require making a moral case about wealth in America? In other words, not just that it shouldn't be concentrated, but that the people who are concentrated with that wealth are bad people. That's part of what fueled the uprising in the Gilded Age against concentrated wealth.
Look, I wouldn't use it that way. I mean, there are some bad people who are poor, there are bad people who are rich, there are bad people who are middle class, there are bad people who are black and white and Latino, everything else. I don't look at it that way. What I look at it is we have created a system which is basically out of control. And that system is that you have billionaire corporations, corporations like Amazon that make billions of profit, don't pay a nickel in taxes. You have 3 people who own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. That is the issue. It's not those 3 people. It is that we have allowed that to take place. So we got veterans sleeping out on the street. We have kids who can't afford to go to college. You got 30 million people who have no health care, and then you got 3 people who own more wealth than the bottom half of America. That is wrong. That's morally wrong, in my view. That is bad economics.
The system in Washington that you're familiar with, even though you're trying to run a revolution from the outside, is it possible to have bipartisan, let's reason together in Washington, or do you need to do things like get rid of the filibuster to break through some of the systemic things that block both Republicans and Democrats?
No, I'm not crazy about getting rid of the filibuster. But I think the problem is people often talk about the lack of comedy and the anger. The real issue is that you have in Washington a system which is dominated by wealthy campaign contributors. Who in their right minds? You go out, do a poll, all right? Here's a suggestion, CBS, do a poll. Do you think it is a good idea to give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1% in private corporations and then cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid? That's the Republican agenda. What percentage of the American people support that? 5%, 10%? Nobody. And yet that's what happens. Why? Because billionaires and wealthy campaign contributors significantly control what goes on in Washington. And that is why, among many other things, we have to overturn Citizens United. We have to do away with this horrible voter suppression. Every American, regardless of your political view, should be outraged that you have governors and attorney generals in this country trying to keep people from voting because of their color or because of their economic status. Outrageous.
Let me ask you about a theory that Howard Schultz has now said he would not run as an independent if the Democrats nominate a moderate.
Oh, isn't that nice? But you raise a good thing. Why is Howard Schultz on every television station in this country? Why are you quoting Howard Schultz? Because he's a billionaire, all right? There are a lot of people I know personally who work hard for a living, who make $40,000, $50,000 a year, who know a lot more about politics than, in all due respect, does Mr. Schultz. But because we have a corrupt political system, anybody who is a billionaire, who can throw a lot of TV ads on television, suddenly becomes very, very credible. So what Mr. Schultz, what is he, blackmailing the Democratic Party? If you don't nominate Bernie Sanders, he's not going to run? Well, I don't think we should succumb to that kind of blackmail.
The other reason is that he represents an argument that some people make, which is if you're worried about Donald Trump, the Democratic Party, to win voters in various parts of the country, needs to pick somebody who is not so radical. That's also what his theory represents.
Well, I think his deeper theory is, hey, I'm a billionaire, leave me alone. and let me make as much money as I can without paying my fair share of taxes. And let me continue to have undue political influence, which you are quoting me. All right, here is a billionaire. No one's ever heard of this guy. Well, not many people have. He's a billionaire. He's thinking of running for president. Suddenly he's a very famous guy. That is a problem with our political system.
You'll be 79 when you're inaugurated.
Yes.
That's old by the standards of presidents.
Yes.
Should people be concerned about that?
I think, when we look at people, whether they're old or they're young, you got to look at the totality of the person. I'm sure you have bumped into people who are 90 who do great work. You have bumped into people who are 45 or 50. You got to wake up because they're falling asleep all of the time. I have been blessed, thank God. This is wood, I'm going to knock on it, with good health and with good energy. I was a cross-country runner, a long-distance runner when I was a kid, and I've been running hard, in a sense, since then. So, I think as a nation, as we try to stand up and oppose all forms of discrimination, whether it is racism or sexism or homophobia or Islamophobia, whatever it may be, I think we got to take a hard look at ageism as well. Judge a person on, whether you like them, whether their ideas make sense, whether you think they could do the job. I think that's how we should look at people running for office, and not just on one criteria about age.
We're out of time, but I got a couple more questions for you. There has been talk, Andrew McCabe was the deputy director of the FBI, has a book out. He talked about the 25th Amendment with respect to this president. You're thinking of being president. Is it wise for the institution of the presidency to have kind of informal talk about the 25th Amendment? A lot of progressives like the idea. Is that good and healthy for the presidency?
All that I will answer that question by saying this. There are right now a number of investigations, most significantly the Mueller investigation, looking in this case whether there was collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. I think it's a little bit preliminary to be giving you answers before we see the results of those investigations.
But should people be talking about the 25th Amendment?
Again, I don't talk about it.
Foreign policy. You wanted America out of a lot of the wars that it was engaged in. Donald Trump wants that too. You said about North Korea that it was a good first step to positive step to de-escalate tensions. Right. Yeah. It would seem like Donald Trump's foreign policy is in sync with your view.
No, it's not. In this sense, Trump has gone out of his way to antagonize our long-term allies. I mean, to insult our Canadian neighbors, to insult Germany, the United Kingdom, France, is, almost incomprehensible. On the other hand, I have called for, you're absolutely right. I think the idea that we are going to withdraw troops from Syria or from Afghanistan is the right thing, but it has to be done not through a tweet. I mean, this is not easy stuff. You can't turn your backs on your allies. You can't leave people in danger. So the idea of getting out of wars that we have been in for a very long time is good, but it has got to be done in the right way. It has to be done with our allies, not through tweets.
Last question. There were charges in your last campaign that women felt there was discrimination against them, that there was sexism. You met with some of those former staffers. What did you learn?
I learned that was true. And it breaks my heart. And, our campaign kind of exploded. We went from a few people to a lot of people, and I will be very honest in telling you that, in retrospect, some of the people that were hired should not have been hired, and some women went through experiences that they should not have. But let me also say this. In my 2018 campaign for re-election to the United States Senate from Vermont, and in this campaign for president, we are going to have the strongest protocols to protect women and anybody else against any form of harassment. We are going to be training every employee who works for us, and we're going to give people who feel that they've been harassed the opportunity to talk to people outside of the campaign. So this has been an issue that has upset me, and we're going to rectify it in this campaign.
All right. Senator Sanders, thank you.
Thank you very much, John.